Okay, this is AP Psychology, Chapter 7, Part 3. We left off, we were talking about hypnosis. Here we have the discussion about the hypnotic feats that take place, the strength and stamina, perceptual memory abilities are similar of those that are hypnotized as those who are not hypnotized. So here in the picture we see that the person is hypnotized is doing the amazing feat of being able to support the weight of another person on top of them. However, they would be able to manage this anyway. It's just a simple trick. Uh, so the facts and falsehoods that take place, those who practice hypnosis agree that this is a power resides in the subject's openness to suggestions. So what we're going to do is discuss the characteristics of people who are susceptible to hypnosis and evaluate their claims. Hypnosis can influence people's memories, will, health, and perception of pain. People who are highly hypnotizable uh, uh, People who are highly hypnotizable frequently become deeply absorbed in imaginative activities. So, can anyone experience hypnosis? Yes, to some extent. Can hypnosis recall forgotten events? No, it can't. Can hypnosis force people to act against their will? Hypnosis does not enhance recall of forgotten events and may even foster false memories. Research indicates that hypnotized people cannot be made to act against their will any more than non-hypnotized people. And hypnosis can be at least temporarily therapeutic. Uh, yes, self-suggestion can heal too. Post-hypnotic suggestions have helped people to reduce headaches, asthma, stress-related skin disorders, and behaviors related to obesity. Hypnotizable people can enjoy significant pain relief. One theory finds that the answer to pain relief in disassociation, a split between the different levels of consciousness. Is hypnosis an altered state of consciousness? Well, there are arguments for and against hypnosis as an altered state of consciousness. The belief of hypnosis produces a disassociation gains support from the fact that hypnotized subjects sometimes carry out suggested behaviors on cue, even when they believe no one else is watching them. So, social influence theory says hypnotic subjects are simply being imaginative actors playing a social role. Divided consciousness theory, hypnosis is a special state of disassociated or divided consciousness. Furthermore, hypnosis is accompanied by distinctive brain activity. The divided consciousness theory of hypnosis argues that hypnosis involves disassociation that is more extreme than everyday disassociations that occur in our information processing. Hilgard suggests that a hidden observer accounts for hypnotized subjects' awareness of experiences that go unreported during hypnosis. Other psychologists argue that hypnosis is a byproduct of normal social cognitive processes that not only uh, that not a unique state of consciousness. These advocates of social influence theory note that behavior produced through hypnotic procedures can also be produced without them. Hypnotized people may be acting the role of good hypnotic subjects and allowing the hypnotist to direct their fantasies. Evidence for this view comes from experiments in which the researcher tells the hypnotized subjects that hypnosis reveals their gullibility and they stop responding as directed. So these are the two theories. Attention is diverted from aversive odor And how divided consciousness theory is hypnosis has caused a split awareness, where social influence theory, the subject is caught up in hypnotized role that she ignores the odor. Drugs and consciousness. Psychoactive drug, a chemical substance that alters perceptions and mood and affects consciousness. So we're going to talk about psychoactive drugs. Are chemicals that change perceptions and moods. And then we're going to discuss the nature of drug dependence and identify 3 common misconceptions about addiction. The continued use of psychoactive drug produces tolerance, and cessation of its use may produce the undesirable side effects that we know as withdrawal. The pain of withdrawal and intense craving for a dose indicates a physical dependence. People can also develop psychological dependence, particularly for drugs used to relieve stress. So continued use of a psychoactive drug produces tolerance. With repeated exposure to the drug's effect lessens, thus taking greater quantities to get the desired effect. And this is much of how we've ended up with the opioid epidemic that we have today, with the overprescription of painkillers. Many drug researchers believe that the 3 myths about addictions are false. That 1, medical drugs, for example, those who use to control pain, are powerfully addictive. 2, addictions cannot be overcome voluntarily, but only through treatment. And 3, we can extend the concept of addiction to cover a whole spectrum of repetitive pleasure-seeking behaviors such as overeating, exercise, gambling, sex, surfing the internet, etc. So withdrawal is a period that takes place upon stopping the use of a drug. After addiction, users experience the undesirable effects of withdrawal. Dependence is the absence of a drug that may lead to the feeling of physical pain, intense cravings, physical dependence, and negative emotions. Psychological dependence. Misconceptions about addiction. Addiction is a craving for a chemical substance despite its adverse consequences. Addictive drugs quickly corrupt. Addiction cannot be overcome voluntarily, and addiction is no different than repetitive pleasure-seeking behaviors. These are all misconceptions about addiction. Psychoactive drugs are divided into 3 groups: depressants, stimulants, and hallucinogens. So what we're doing is naming the main categories of psychoactive drugs and list the way these substances can interfere with neurotransmission in the brain. And these are psychoactive drugs include the depressants, stimulants, and hallucinogens. Drugs in all 3 categories operate at the brain synapses by stimulating, inhibiting, or mimicking the activity of neurotransmitters, the brain's chemical messengers. Our expectations also play a role in effects of drugs. Depressants are drugs that reduce neural activity and slow bodily functions. They include alcohol, barbiturates, and opiates. So what we're going to do here is to explain how depressants affect the nervous system, the activity, behavior, and summarize findings on alcohol use and abuse. Depressants such as alcohol, barbiturates, and opiates act by reducing the neural activity and slowing body functions. Each offers its own pleasures, but at the cost of impaired memory, self-awareness, and other physical consequences. Alcohol is a disinhibitor and thus increases the likelihood that we will act on both helpful and harmful impulses. It also impairs our judgment, reduces our self-awareness, and disrupts memory processes by suppressing REM sleep. Research indicates that when people believe that alcohol affects social behavior in specific ways and believe that they have been drinking alcohol, they will behave accordingly. So alcohol affects our motor skills and judgment. Memory increases aggressiveness while reducing our self-awareness. So here's a scan of a woman with alcoholism versus the brain of a person without alcoholism. So as you can see here, there are many holes within the brain caused by the damage of the alcohol. Barbiturates. Barbiturates are drugs that depress the activity of the central nervous system, reducing anxiety but impairing memory and judgment. Nembutal, Seconal, and Amytal are some of the examples of barbiturates. And then opium or opiates, which is what we currently have a major epidemic in, is made from opium and its derivatives, morphine and heroin. They depress neural activity, temporarily lessening pain and anxiety, and they too are highly addictive. Now we're going to talk about stimulants. We're going to identify the major stimulants and explain how they affect neural activity and behavior. Stimulants such as caffeine and nicotine and amphetamines and even more powerful cocaine, ecstasy, and methamphetamine excite neural activity and arouse body functions. As with nearly all psychoactive drugs, they act at the synapses by influencing the brain's neurotransmitters, and their effects depend on the dosage, the user's personality, and expectations. Methamphetamine is highly addictive over time, and it appears to reduce baseline dopamine levels. Cocaine produces euphoric rush and lasts 15 to 30 minutes and depletes the brain's supply of neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, a crash of agitated depression. Caffeine and nicotine increase the heart and breathing rates and other autonomic functions to provide energy. Oftentimes people feel that these substances actually help them relax, when in actuality they are stimulants to the body. Amphetamines stimulate the neural activity, causing accelerated body function that's associated energy and mood changes with devastating effects. And of course, this is a famous pairing of pictures of a girl before her use of meth and after. Ecstasy is a stimulant and mild hallucinogen. It also produces a euphoric high and can damage serotonin-producing neurons, which results in a permanent deflation of mood and impairment of memory. Regular users become addicted and may experience emotional disturbance of suspiciousness, convulsions, cardiac arrest, respiratory failure. Ecstasy is both a stimulant and mild hallucinogen. By releasing serotonin and blocking its reuptake, it produces euphoria and feelings of intimacy. Its repeated use may suppress the immune system, destroy serotonin-producing neurons, and permanently damage mood and memory. Cocaine, of course, induces immediate euphoria followed by a crash. There's another form of cocaine known as crack that can be smoked, and other forms of cocaine can be sniffed or injected. So what we're going to do now is describe the physiological and psychological effects of hallucinogens and summarize the effects of LSD and marijuana. Hallucinogens are psychedelic, mild manifesting drugs that distort perceptions and evoke sensory images in the absence of sensory input. LSD and powerful hallucinogens are chemically similar to and therefore block the actions of a subtype of neurotransmitter serotonin. Common components of LSD